Welcome back. Victorian healthcare workers are desperately pleading for more personal protective gear this morning amid revelations 1 in 5 doctors are unable to access face masks. It comes as infections among medical professionals double in the past fortnight in Victoria, with nearly 1,000 workers testing positive.
Let's get today's take on this with Shelley Horton from Nine Honey and journalist from the Saturday paper, Osman Faruqi. Osman, I'll go to you first. Welcome to the show. You were at the epicentre there, Oz, in Melbourne. How worrying is this for you?
Yeah, it's really concerning, particularly as you mentioned, the fact that we've now got nearly 1,000 healthcare workers who have contracted the virus, and that's about 1 in 7 of Victoria's total cases. And obviously these are people, nurses, doctors on the front lines, giving up their time and putting themselves and their families at risk. And I think the thing that concerns me the most is at the start of this pandemic, we got really lucky as a country. We had relatively low cases. We were isolated as an island. We had a pretty strict, border and quarantine sort of policy, and that should have given us time to buy this kind of equipment. And I'm kind of curious as to what happened. I feel like there are questions that need to be answered. Why we weren't using the last few months, it seems, to build up the stockpile necessary to keep our doctors and nurses safe.
Shelley, I think that's the point that Oz is making, isn't it? How is it possible that we weren't prepared for this?
Well, it seems like there's a huge disconnect between what the government's saying and what the doctors are saying. The government is saying that there is plenty of equipment, that they've got 50 million masks and it's all fine. But you know what? In a situation like this, I am always going to err on the side of our frontline workers. They are the ones who are risking their lives to save others. So if they're saying that they don't have enough PPE, I think this needs to be the number one on the agenda for national and Victorian health to look at, because we want our workers to make sure that they feel safe. This is an absolute disaster if they are going without masks. And I don't think there's a single Australian who would actually say that they begrudge any frontline worker having PPE.
Oz, it's a tale of two states this morning. In Queensland, we've reached 2 weeks since those border breaches. It seems they've got community transmission under control. In Victoria, it raced away so quickly. And we know there were problems with the hotel quarantine. We know there have been problems with allowing people with the virus out into the community for an hour at a time at a day. And now we've got problems with access to PPE as well. But there's a big blame game going on at the moment. Who should shoulder the responsibility for all of this? What's your take on that, on the blame game that's happening?
Yeah, the kind of two countries we're living in is very fascinating right now. As a Victorian, it's quite hard to be looking at Instagram, for example, and seeing my friends and family in New South Wales and Queensland travelling around and going to pubs and going on little holidays to the regions. But it's a really great question. How did Victoria end up in this situation? And the government has been very clear here that, its responsibilities, it's been doing the best that it can, and it sheeted a lot of the blame on individuals who it said have acted selfishly, have broken the rules, and have spread the virus by carrying it while they went to work. But I think there are bigger questions to answer. Like you said, the hotel quarantine situation, that inquiry's now been kicked down the road for a couple of months, so we're not going to get answers there. There's more and more stories you hear every day about people who tested positive to the virus not being contacted by the Department of Health, or their close contacts not being contacted for days or even weeks after they tested positive. So it does seem like part of the reason why Victoria ended up in this situation was a slow response by health officials, but the government obviously doesn't want to acknowledge that, so it's responding by blaming people for carrying the virus and breaking the rules. And look, to be honest, it's probably a little bit of both, but in the middle of a pandemic, you don't want the government to be shifting responsibility. You want them to own up to their mistakes and outline what they're going to do to stop it from happening again. Otherwise, we might be stuck in this situation for the foreseeable future.
That's right. All right, let's move on. A new survey has found 1 in 8 Aussies have been drinking every day since the coronavirus outbreak began in March. And now a new ad campaign is aiming to turn around that sobering statistic.
Our lives will head back to normal, but there's something we don't want tagging along with us. It only takes around 66 days for a new routine to become a little habit. Like having a few drinks every night. That's about the time many of us spent in lockdown. Don't let a little habit turn into a big problem.
Shelley, I lived with a big problem like that guy for a while there, but 1 in 5 regret how much alcohol they have actually drunk during this coronavirus lockdown.
Look, when it comes to 1 and 8, I'll put my hand up twice because I drank so much during lockdown. But I've got to also say, like, I was so mentally distressed during lockdown. I was fearful. I was uncertain about what my future was going to be. So, yeah, I used alcohol every single night to self-soothe. Now, once lockdown was over, I went back to my normal drinking habits, which is nothing during the week, and then I drink on the weekends. The issue for me is the 5 kilos I put on during lockdown because of all of the extra booze and a lot of carbs. But I'm just going to say to my Melbourne friends right now, if you need to have a couple of glasses of wine each night to get through this lockdown, I don't think we need to be judging anyone. You can sort it out when you can actually leave your house. I really don't think we need to feel guilty when we're in such a state of crisis.
Oz, have your drinking habits changed during lockdown?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're still in it. I've got to say that we've had to replenish the liquor cabinet in my place quite regularly and a lot more regularly than we otherwise would have. But I think this is such a interesting campaign because, I totally agree with Shelley. We don't want to be judging people for doing what they need to do to get through this. And for a lot of people, the only way to mark when, the work day ends and your evening and social time can begin at home is when you stop drinking coffee and shift to a wine or a beer. But, I think the point about how these habits can become ingrained so quickly and in lockdown continuing, particularly in Melbourne and in Victoria, there is a risk there. And I guess I'm also concerned seeing the numbers of increased people reporting severe mental health issues and the way that drug use can exacerbate those as well. So I think it's good to draw a line between not demonizing or attacking people, but letting people know that there are risks of drinking every day turning into a long-term habit.
Yeah, it's a connection, isn't it? Shelley and Osmond, stay with us because when we come back, why women are more likely to have stronger and longer lasting friendships than men.
And naming a baby after an ex, is that ever okay? Well, it's next.
Well, best friends really are forever, at least if you're a girl. According to new research, teen girls have stronger relationships than boys of the same age. Apparently, we are more likely to share our secrets and help each other deal with difficult situations.
Good. Shelley and Osmond are still here to discuss this. Shell, go on, tell me how great girls are at being friends.
Yeah, we really are. BFFs. Okay. But what I do want to say is this actually sets us up for life because women are great communicators and that starts when we're young. When you look at teenage boys, they are basically grunt at each other and go and play some sport. I think that boys can learn a lot from girls and I think we should encourage them to actually talk a bit more and express their feelings because I think that would set up their mental health way down the track.
I'm still besties with all my school friends. We have a
besties with
WhatsApp chat.
You have a WhatsApp chat?
Yeah, we have a WhatsApp chat. We chat all the time. Osmond, are you still best mates with anyone you went to school with or anyone from your teenage years?
Yeah, a couple, but I think this story nails it, right? It's certainly my experience of high school. I was really jealous of, of the girls at school who seemed so much closer. They'd stay up all night chatting on the phone and guys would grunt at each other when they saw each other in the playground. We didn't have the same kind of D&M conversations. And I think Shelley's spot on. You see those female relationships and people are able to keep that kind of intensity up, whereas guys just tend to find it much harder to have honest conversations with other guy friends.
I don't know how meaningful those late night conversations were when we were 15 years old.
Well, look, just quickly before you two go, let's get into it because while you can be best friends, Shelley, women can also be quite deceitful in some things. A woman has named her newborn son after her ex-boyfriend. The mum had found out her husband had been cheating on her, so she decided to ignore his family tradition of naming firstborn sons after their fathers. Instead, decided to name her kid in honour of her childhood sweetheart who had died of cancer. Osmond, this is a complicated story.
There's a lot going on.
And I'm going to come to you for a decision on this. But the internet is obviously having an opinion on this. But what do you think?
Look, I think the bloke in this situation who had the affair sort of gave up his right to get mad about what his kid was called when he had an affair. But I think the broader question of naming a kid after your ex is super interesting. And here's my thought on it, right? Look, if you've dated someone and you really love their name and you think that's a great name for your kid, that's awesome. But maybe don't tell your new partner that that's the reason you're naming your kid up. Just say, hey, I love this name, Sally or whatever, it's great. don't say I'm doing it because I had this ex-girlfriend and I really think that's, you know, it really brings up great memories for me. I think that's when you get into strife.
Shelley, what's your take?
Good advice.
You cheat, you lose naming rights. The end.
Yeah. Okay, full stop.
Wow, Shelley, cold.
Well summarised.
Okay, all right.
Opinion.
Thanks, both of you. Have a good week. Stay safe, Osman. Thanks, Shelley.
See
Go
you
to
soon.
Facebook and Twitter. Let us
Thanks,
know what you
guys.
think about any of these topics.
Take care in Melbourne, Oz. We'll see you again soon. Coming up on Today Extra this morning.